Jesus continued throughout his ministry on earth, going around and talking to people. After finishing the Sermon on the Mount, they go around town to town, and Jesus continues to draw crowds bigger and bigger and bigger. In one such place, they come to stop, and Jesus is teaching on next to a lake, and people start to just gather and gather and gather around him. Eventually, 4,000 people are there to listen to what Jesus has to say. Jesus becomes concerned about the crowd when they realize that no one has anything to eat. And so a small boy approaches, and he has 5 loaves and 7 fish. What happens next is one of the greatest miracles that is still talked about now of Jesus, that he feeds this crowd of 4,000 people with 5 loaves and 7 fish. There's something about how Jesus felt about these people. There's something about how Jesus wanted to interact. He knew of the concerns that they had. He knew of the needs that they had, and he wanted to meet them there where they are. So we're going to pick up the story here. Let's read together. So Matthew tells the story this way. He says in chapter 15, starting in verse 32, "Then Jesus called his disciples and told them, 'I feel sorry for these people. They have been here with me for 3 days, and they have nothing left to eat. I don't want to send them away hungry, or they will faint along the way.' The disciples replied, 'Where would we get enough food here in the wilderness for such a huge crowd?' Jesus asked, 'How much bread do you have?' They replied, 7 loaves and a few small fish.' So Jesus told all the people to sit down on the ground. Then he took the 7 loaves and the fish, thanked God for them, and broke them into pieces. He gave them to the disciples, who distributed the food to the crowd. They all ate as much as they wanted. Afterward, the disciples picked up 7 large baskets of leftover food. There were 4,000 men who were fed that day, in addition to all the women and children. Then Jesus sent the people home, and he got into a boat and crossed over to the region of Magadan." Can you imagine that? Can you imagine being there? How would you feel? How would you feel knowing that Jesus felt sorry for those people? How would you feel being someone who received a piece of bread or a fish? How would you feel if you were further back in the crowd and you still received bread or fish? What is it that Jesus is trying to tell us through this story? What is it that he's trying to tell you? How are we supposed to react to things like this? Jesus cared about these people. He cared about the people there. If you think about it, have you ever been in our worship center and looked out over the crowd from the stage? It can be overwhelming, and there's only a few hundred people there. The building itself only holds 500 people inside, and we're never that full typically. And so if you can imagine 4,000 men is what it said. That doesn't include the women and the children. That's easily over 8,000 people that Jesus fed with some bread and some fish. How would you feel knowing that Jesus cared so much about you that he found a way to miraculously make that happen, to make that food appear? And then how would you feel at the end when you saw the disciples collect 7 baskets overflowing of extra food? And yet everyone walked away happy and no longer hungry.